Malls and shopping centers throughout the early 90s and 2000 were the place to be around during these times, having them to be the social hub for many kids and teens to hang out, while their parents shopped around the vast amount of stores in the shopping center. More importantly, this particular one in Taunton, Massachusetts, known as the Silver City Galleria, with a few bumps on development, even featuring a whopping 120 plus stores and vendors, having 8 major anchors, a 10-screen theater, 6 sit-down restaurants, and an arcade. How does this once beautiful mall decline into such a depressing liminal nightmare? Crimes and bankruptcy left and right, online shopping on the rise. On top of that, eventually leading into what's now is just a vacant lot. Let's get right into it now, guys, and explore the rise and the collapse of the Silver City Galleria. Development began shortly after the Emerald Square in North Attleboro, which was the previous video I actually made. The mall was starting development in Taunton, Massachusetts of 1989 by the company known as the Pyramid Management Group. During this period, there was a few other mall centers being built in the region, featuring Berkshire Mall and Independence Mall. So competitive markets were on the rise very soon. New England Development originally partnered with Pyramid Management, however split due to the different projects in the works, therefore making it seem New England Development was now a competitor, with developing their own project. The Bridgewater Crossroads was a 2-story mall idea that New England proposed, but the mall didn't even get past development due to multiple reasons such as no anchor stores signing over. Environmentalists were worried about a national park lake in the same general area, having them worried about the pollutants from the hundreds of cars that would destroy the environment, so ultimately the Silver City Galleria has easily won over and got accepted. In the summer of July 1990, the official beginning of the mall was being built. With 1.1 million square feet, this was possibly the largest mall in all of New England. Many families of Taunton and neighboring cities were eager to see what this mall would bring. With the name Silver City, it was referencing Taunton's history in the 19th and 20th century, with it being known for silversmithing in the area back in the day. So the architects wanted to pay homage to that with the very specific designs and color schemes to match. Additionally, over 5,000 parking spots to handle the crowds that will eventually be coming. Opening day in the late winter season of March 1st, 1992, family and guests were rushed to the grand opening of this mall, with it being a very exciting time to shop, as malls were in its second generation. Having 3 major anchor stores to draw in customers, that was of course Filene's, having later turned to Macy's, Sears, and JCPenney. But with a few additional ones on the way a year later such as Bradley's, Leach Mirror, and even Regal Cinemas. Estimating roughly 12,000 cars arriving, people had to fight and rush to any opening spots to park, leading to drivers parking in fire lanes and even construction zones. Traffic supposedly being such a tedious wait between 12:30 to 3, this was the first of few frustrating things to deal with on opening day. It was said in a Ruby Tuesdays, a couple smoking in the mall triggered a fire alarm, therefore lasting for nearly 8 minutes of constant noise for guests. By the time the staff finally got it off, people actually cheered for it. But overall though, opening day was a huge success for the Silver City Galleria. Things were looking bright for the largest mall in all of New England, right? So how did this once gigantic beautiful shopping center, once filled with hundreds of families, teens, and kids to spend their day in, turn into a liminal space and barren wasteland eventually? Well, for starters, the mall is completely in the middle of nowhere. No neighbors or buildings nearby whatsoever besides just solely focusing on the highway traffic oncomers, meaning you had to travel quite some distance just to get there, which can definitely turn off some people, which is honestly a huge factor. Going through the 90s and early 2000s, this was usually the era where malls were still in decent numbers in sales. Not the greatest, but they were still pretty popular. My point meaning that this mall unfortunately was already on the failing side right at the early 2000s, when the stock market crash of September 2008 happened. In other words, the Great Recession. Financial situations with the owners at the time, General Growth Properties, were starting to see that the results of displacement of the mall, and following the Great Recession, retailers were closing their doors with no replacements. There was a dramatic shift in very little traffic of people going through, leading to no sales, therefore making the owners of the mall in debt. Even more businesses and stores started leaving the Galleria to the result of little foot traffic, such as Bradley's making its exit very early on in 2001, since unfortunately the chain had Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but with some little hope of Dick's Sporting Goods taking its vacant spot in 2004. But that's not stopping notable national chains that were here, like PacSun, Max Rave, and Old Navy had closed their locations with many smaller businesses on the way out. From the period of 2010 to 2011, General Growth Properties was still in debt with a $125 million outstanding mortgage still remaining, and was still unable to pay. Additionally, occupancy was still just around 75%. It's not great, but it was considered low by the market standards by this era. General Growth Properties initially started filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which led by default going to a foreclosure by the bank, taking the property by Midland Loan Services, then was later managed onto Cushman & Wakefield Real Estate Management to take control and find a potential buyer of the Galleria. Just 2 years later, in July of 2013, the mall had a partner of buyers, MG Herring Group, Tricom Real Estate, and Estate Group LLC, 3 development companies sharing the buyout. To assure everyone of Taunton that this mall is in safe hands, they announced a year later that this place will get revitalized, in hopes of having many families and guests to return to this Galleria and have such a great experience there once again. Even the Sears store manager there at the time even quoted, "We need to get these vacancies filled. It's a beautiful mall, but the problem is it's just empty. I hope they bring new life back and increase the footsteps coming in." So to me, it's really starting to show that there was more than enough room, maybe even too much, especially since it's over 1 million square feet. By this point in time of 2014, there was over 30 vacancies now, with just a little over 90 tenants. 2015 and 2016 at the time was looking bright for the future of the new owners. Round 1 Entertainment will be moving in shortly and taking the spot where Steve and Barry's used to be. Things were looking bright for the Galleria. More plans of additional stores and restaurants wanting to open there, but those plans unfortunately seem to be false promises, especially since JCPenney leaving the Galleria in January of 2015.
Mall was shutting its doors. Well, now we've learned that the one in the Silver City Galleria in Taunton will also close. The department store chain is closing a total of 39 stores and laying off 2,200 workers.
On top of that, not only false hopes were made, but unfortunately a terrible and tragic event happened at the Galleria as well.
Surveillance video from inside the Silver City Galleria.
The Bristol County District Attorney's Office released hours of video showing the tense moments of the Taunton tragedy.
Where stabbed happened inside the Bertucci's restaurant. To recap, a witness telling us,
for people who shop and work in this area, this news is really disheartening.
Devastating. I don't understand the level of violence that we are experiencing in St. Louis. It is so discouraging.
On May 10, 2016, there was reports of a break-in of a home on Myrick Street, which was not too far from the mall. It was later identified as Arthur DeRosa and was reported to not only be broken into the home, stabbed and killed 2 people, an 80-year-old woman and her daughter, who was 48 at the time. He then continues stealing their Honda and driving off down the street until he crashes into the Macy's at the Galleria. Not only did he not stop there, he then runs into the Bertucci's restaurant and stabs 2 more people, plus assaulting 3 others. Then finally it all ends when an off-duty cop ends up shooting DeRosa. This was definitely the most tragic event happening there at the Galleria. Many families involved in the losses, and I can't even imagine the trauma some people must have felt from experiencing it, which I'm sure gave the mall a bad reputation of looking unsafe to the public for a while too. Continuing in on the decline, that very same Macy's from earlier announced on January of 2017 that this location will be closing due to 68 other Macy's stores not doing well, which this one in particular, of course, was one of them. Not only Macy's, Best Buy was on its way out as well the very same year. Following that, the next year was only getting worse for this mall. Sears has got up and closed its stores as well in 2018.
And one in Taunton is on the chopping block.
The company announcing it's closing the location at the Silver City Galleria. Eyewitness News reporter Kate Walsh has been tracking the story all day,
leaving just one anchor store left in the Galleria. I do have to say this, once anchor stores were leaving, many other smaller businesses were leaving on its way. You really got to see how the mall has such a beautiful liminal space vibe. Food courts and stores empty walkways and paths, escalators frozen in place. It's really as if the place froze in time for the last few years of its life. What used to have many kids and teens in the arcade to the families who would spend hours in here, admiring the decor and architecture and empty shops. I just thought I had to mention the beauty of it. In its final years, one major anchor store remains, Dick's Sporting Goods, with various other tenants still remain such as Round 1, Regal Cinemas, and Workout World. But it was down on its last knees and people knew the mall was going to end very soon. Well, the original partner companies decided it was time. Since the Galleria got foreclosed yet again due to unpaid mortgaging, it was then put up for auction on May 17, 2019. Going for $7.5 million, having yet again another new owner as the Tebow development, with the same plans and ideas of trying to redevelop this Galleria, plus maintaining what's already here. But what already seemed like it was too far gone, in retrospect you're correct. The Galleria owners decided out of nowhere to abruptly evict 6 tenants, 2 of the 6 being FYE and GameStop. The last remaining smaller stores that remained was T-Mobile and Spencer's, but was already told on its last day it's coming at the end of February. It's really depressing, honestly, seeing development companies try and try again to revitalize massive malls like this, especially with the amount of money these companies have. T-Mobile development would seem like at this point it was not even trying anymore, just eventually waited out until every business was not able to catch up anymore. Even around this point, YouTubers were even making videos of going around the parts of the mall that were abandoned, seeing how it is before its final closure. The absolute last remaining business was simply Dick's Sporting Goods, Round 1, and Workout World. During the pandemic of 2020, the stores were shut down briefly for a few months. This was the final nail in the coffin. Once the next year hit of 2021, it was finally decided. The last remaining stores in cinema has finally closed January of 2021, with the unfortunate news of a demolition coming May 9th of 2021. The owners of the mall stated that it was way too expensive to keep open anymore. They were losing thousands of dollars on a daily from this place. After the demolition, it was now a vacant lot, once having thousands of customers and guests in this massive Galleria to just being a vacant and depressing wasteland. The land was then bought by Portman of Atlanta in June of 2021, but as of right now in 2025, there's plans of building an industrial park hoping for a release in 2026. But that's all we really know at the time. So overall, guys, malls are simply hit or miss. Nowadays, some are either really successful and thriving with more modern business practices, or just failing to the point where it's nearly just a liminal space nightmare. The Galleria being once the largest giant in New England, it was the place to shop, eat, game, and even watch movies. But at the end of the day, it's all just business for these companies. If something is failing, they simply cut out that store, but with no plans for backup. It was a harsh reality for many smaller businesses, I'm sure. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, enjoy the malls while we still have them. Malls are slowly becoming more and more rare as they shut down. Let me know which dead mall I should cover next, guys. Like, subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for watching.